Azindo did not decide to walk north. His legs decided for him. He had spent the hours since burning Pogna Zara's message sitting beside the scorch mark where the girl had died, arguing with a part of himself that did not argue back. His shadow simply pulled. Gently, persistently, the way water pulls at a riverbank. Not with violence, but with the patient certainty of something that would eventually win. By the time the first gray light of pre-dawn touched the savannah vale, he was walking. His conscious mind supplied reasons. The dying candidates, the corrupted Enskinment, the faceless figure in the chamber. Good reasons. Rational reasons. But beneath the rational reasons was the shadow's pull, and beneath that was something Azindo did not want to examine too closely: the sound of the Lunsi drums, the ache behind his sternum that he refused to call longing, the bone-deep truth that exile had not freed him from Ironhaven. It had only taught him how much of himself he had left behind. The harmattan pushed against his back like a hand, steering a child toward punishment. He reached the first Waystone at mid-morning. It stood alone in the elephant grass, a pillar of red laterite twice his height, carved with the exile boundaries enforcement pattern. The geometric script spiraled up its face in tight, precise lines that Azindo could feel humming against his teeth before he was close enough to read them. The pattern was a promise. Cross this line, and the exile curse activates. Your skin will be taken, not metaphorically. The Enskinment's authority over flesh was absolute, and in exile's skin, the literal boundary of self belonged to Ironhaven until the exile was formally revoked. Azindo stopped 3 paces away. The carved pattern pressed against his eardrums like water pressure at depth. His shadow, which had been pulling him steadily north for hours, went still, not relaxed, coiled, waiting. He thought about the girl. 7 candidates in 3 moons. 3 dead that he knew of. 4 more walking around with a corrupted bond eating them from the inside, counting the days until their skin cracked open and the harmattan carried them away like they had never existed. He stepped past the Waystone. The curse hit him like boiling water poured over his whole body at once. Not sound, not pressure. Heat and wrongness, the exile pattern on the Waystone detonating a command that bypassed his ears and spoke directly to his flesh. Peel, separate, come away from the bone that is no longer yours to cover. He felt his skin tighten across his knuckles first, then his forearms, his neck, his scalp. The dermis lifting from the subcutaneous layer, the way bark lifts from a dead tree in dry season. He could feel the air trying to get between his skin and his muscles. Could feel the individual points where the tissue was tearing free. 1,000 tiny separations like stitches being pulled from a wound that had not finished healing. His mouth opened. No sound came out. The pain was past sound. His shadow exploded upward. It rose from the ground in a column of darkness that wrapped around him like a second skin, literally, directly over his first. The exile curse struck the shadow, and Azindo felt the impact shudder through the dark envelope, felt the geometric command scrabbling for purchase on a surface that was not flesh but was not absence either. The shadow was something between, a skin made of unlight, of the space where his body blocked the sun. The curse could not grip it. It slid off the shadow's surface like water off palm oil. The enforcement pattern, fracturing and dissolving as it tried to separate something that had no layers to separate. The Waystone cracked. A single fissure ran from the carved pattern to its base, splitting the laterite with a sound like a femur breaking. The humming stopped. The curse dissipated. Azindo's skin settled back against his body. The sensation was worse than the peeling. Every nerve ending firing at once as the dermis receded itself against muscle and fat and bone, as if his body were learning the shape of itself again from the outside in. He tasted copper and bile. His hands would not stop shaking. 3 gray hairs drifted past his eyes, his own, shed from his temples where the shadow had anchored itself. His shadow sank back to the ground and resumed its patient northward pull as if nothing had happened. He stood on the exile side of a broken Waystone, with his pulse hammering in his ears and the absolute knowledge that what had just happened should not have been possible. The shadow binding was not supposed to be a shield. It was a minor gift of the lower Enskinment given to candidates during their assessment period. Shadow binders could manipulate darkness, extend their shadow, sense vibrations through shadow contact. They could not absorb a full exile curse and crack a Waystone. Unless the binding was not what he had been told it was. He walked faster. His skin itched everywhere, a deep crawling wrongness like wearing a garment that did not quite fit. His fingertips tingled. When he pressed his thumb against his opposite palm, the sensation arrived half a second late, as though his nerves were still finding their way back to the correct addresses. The wrongness clung to him like sweat that would not dry. The landscape changed as he crossed into Ironhaven's territory. The Savannah Vale's bleached emptiness gave way to cultivated land millet fields with stalks taller than a man, shea orchards heavy with unripe fruit, clusters of round huts with thatched roofs arranged in the concentric pattern of family compounds. The damba preparations were everywhere. Bunting in red and gold draped between trees. Temporary stages for the Lunsi drummers were being erected at crossroads, the fresh-cut wood smelling of sap and iron-rich soil. Children ran between the compounds carrying garlands of dried flowers, their laughter sharp and bright in the morning air, and the sound opened something in Azindo's chest that he closed immediately. Nobody recognized him. 3 months of exile had leaned him down to wire and sinew, and the Harmattan dust had darkened his skin another shade. He moved through the outer settlements like a stranger, which was exactly what he needed to be. The second weavebird found him at noon. It dropped from the sky without warning, a construct of indigo and white cotton, identical to the first, bearing Pugna Zada's triple-line seal. This message was shorter. Do not approach the main gates. The Kambonaba has loyalists watching. Enter through the old quarter, the Potter's Lane, third compound on the left. I will be there at sundown. Azindo burned this message too, but he turned toward the old quarter. The Potter's Lane was narrow and winding, hemmed in by kilns that had not been fired in years. Clay dust coated everything, the walls, the ground, the air itself, and it tasted of old earth and ash when Azindo breathed through his mouth. The old quarter was the original settlement from which Ironhaven had grown, a cluster of ancient compounds predating the faction system, maintained now by tradition rather than necessity. Few people lived here. Fewer visited. He waited in the third compound, an empty courtyard ringed by mud brick rooms with collapsed roofs, open to the sky. The afternoon sun baked the clay floor until it radiated heat through his sandals. He sat with his back against a wall that still held the ghost warmth of the morning, and the clay pressed against his shoulder blades felt almost like a hand. A gecko watched him from the lintel of a doorway, throat pulsing. His skin still itched. He scratched the inside of his left wrist, and the scratch arrived with that same half-second delay, the nerve still not quite settled. The Waystone crossing had cost him something he could not name. Not energy, not blood. Something in the fit of himself, the way his body sat inside his skin. It felt borrowed now. Ill-fitting. As if the curse had partially succeeded and his shadow had stuffed him back in afterward without getting all the edges right. The sun crawled westward. Cooking fires began to glow in the inhabited compounds beyond the old quarter's boundary, and the smell of groundnut soup and wood smoke drifted over the broken walls, rich and sharp, and so familiar it made his jaw ache. Someone was pounding fufu, the rhythmic thud of pestle on mortar, carrying through the evening air like a second heartbeat. A child's voice called out a name he could not catch. The damba drums started up in the distance, deep and steady, and the vibrations traveled through the clay floor and up through his spine. Then Pugna Zada arrived. She came alone. No guards, no attendants, no symbols of office. She wore a plain smock, undyed cotton, no enchantment, the kind of garment a market woman would wear to the morning well. But her bearing betrayed her. Pugna Zada moved with the contained authority of someone who had been enskinned legitimately, whose bond to the ancestral line was unbroken, whose feet touched the earth with the weight of 1,000 years of succession behind each step. She could not have disguised that if she tried. She was older than he remembered. 3 months should not have aged her, but the Enskinment crisis had carved new lines around her eyes and mouth. Her hair, steel gray at his exile, was now fully white. The skin beneath her eyes was bruised with sleeplessness. Her hands, the hands that wove words into cloth and policy into law with equal precision, trembled slightly as she lowered herself onto the low wall at the courtyard's edge. Not the deliberate casualness of a queen making herself approachable. The exhaustion of a woman whose legs could no longer be trusted to hold her upright. The earth bond was drawing on her. Whatever it cost to hold Ironhaven together without a completed Enskinment renewal, she was paying it in years.
You burned my message,
She said, not a question.
Both of them.
and yet you are here.
She looked at his shadow, lying flat and still beneath him like a dog that had reached its destination.
Your shadow brought you.
Azindo said nothing. Pognazara reached into the folds of her smock and produced a small clay pot, stoppered with a plug of shea butter. She unstoppered it, and the smell hit Azindo before she spoke kili, the ground nut cakes his mother used to press from roasted paste and fry in shea oil. The smell was a fist in his chest.
Eat.
As she said,
You look like the veil has been chewing on you.
he took one. It was still warm. The oil had soaked through the clay and the cake crumbled on his tongue, rich and salty and so violently familiar that for a moment he could not swallow. He ate a second one before he trusted his voice.
Start with the Enskinment.
She nodded, but she did not launch into it the way the old Zara would have measured, precise, every sentence a paragraph of policy. She started, stopped, pressed her fingers against her temples, started again.
The skin has produced no legitimate successor in 14 months, not since your candidacy.
As she paused,
Every candidate who sits it either rejects violently, the way you did, or bonds with something that is not the true skin.
another pause, longer. She was choosing words the way a woman walks across rotten floorboards, testing each one before committing her weight.
The bond they form is a corruption. It mimics the true Enskinment but inverts it. Instead of connecting the chief to the ancestral line, it connects them to something else. Something that feeds.
I have seen what it does to them, in the veil.
Then you know more than the Kambonaba.
Her mouth tightened.
He believes the candidates are weak, unworthy. He does not know about the corruption because the corrupted candidates leave Ironhaven before the symptoms show. By the time their skin begins to crack, they are beyond the Waystones and their deaths are.
Not unwitnessed.
Azindo said.
I have been witnessing.
She looked at him, a long, measured look that held more than any words could carry. He saw recognition in her eyes, and beneath it, relief so naked it bordered on grief. She had been carrying this alone for 14 months. The weight of it was in her white hair, in the tremor of her hands, in the bruised hollows beneath her eyes. For one moment the Pugna was just a tired woman in a borrowed courtyard, and the moment passed, and she was iron again.
The skin rejected you, Azindo. Do you understand what that means?
It means I failed.
It means you were tested by the real skin before it was replaced.
She let the words land, waited.
The rejection happened because the true skin, the original leopard hide, connected to the ancestral line, recognized that you were compatible. It reached for you. And in that reaching, it felt the copy beneath it. The corruption that had already been laid over its pattern like a parasite on a host.
She stopped, her jaw worked.
The skin rejected you to protect you. It pushed you out before the false bond could take hold.
The words hit Azindo in the base of his spine. 3 months of certainty, 3 months built on the bedrock knowledge that he had been found wanting, that the skin had looked inside him and found something insufficient cracked like the Waystone had cracked. Not cleanly, in jagged pieces that cut on the way down. His hands opened and closed. He felt it in his chest, in his stomach, in the backs of his knees. Not understanding, something more physical than understanding. A rearrangement. The way a dislocated joint feels when it slides back into the socket wrong, then right, then a pain that is also relief.
You're saying the skin chose me.
I am saying the skin saved you. There is a difference.
No triumph in her voice. No vindication. Only the flat exhaustion of a woman who had been working a puzzle with missing pieces for too long.
After your rejection, the real skin went dormant. It has not spoken to any candidate since. The corruption remains active. It is the copy that bonds, the copy that feeds. But the true skin is still there, beneath the dais, hidden under the copy like a seed buried under ash.
How do you know this?
Because the skin spoke to me, once,
She touched the ground with her palm, habitual, sacred.
through the earth bond, through the root lines that connect my authority to every stone in Ironhaven.
Her fingers pressed into the clay.
It said one word, your name.
Azindo's shadow stirred, not toward Ironhaven this time, toward Pognazara, toward the place where her hand met the earth. A bat crossed the courtyard, its wingbeats a soft leather sound against the dark.
There is more,
As she said,
and this is the part you will not want to hear.
Tohage.
her hand lifted from the ground a fraction too fast.
You know,
I do not know I saw.
He told her about the vision, the chamber, the faceless figure, the sacred pattern being rewritten by hands clothed in a smock woven from absence.
The figure was in the chamber standing behind the dais, working on the skin. The corruption is not an accident, Pognazara. Someone is doing this deliberately.
She stood while he spoke. She could not sit still for this. She paced the length of the courtyard wall, 3 steps and turn, 3 steps and turn, her fingers working the edge of her smock the way Azindo had seen market women worry cloth when waiting for news of a sick child.
Tohage was the last person recorded entering the Enskinment chamber before the first corruption manifested.
She said, her voice thin to a blade.
He entered as the Ashvale Order's observer during a routine inspection. He was in the chamber for 11 minutes. When he left, the observation records showed nothing unusual.
3 steps, turn.
7 days later, the first candidate bonded wrong.
And Tohage.
Disappeared 3 months ago, the same week you were exiled.
She stopped pacing. In the dark courtyard, with the damba drums shaking dust from the collapsed roofs, she looked like a woman standing at the edge of a well, deciding whether to jump or walk away.
He was the commander of the Ashvale Order, the faction's shadow warfare division. If anyone had the knowledge to tamper with the Enskinment pattern, it was him.
She trailed off. The drums filled the silence, patient and enormous.
What motive?
She looked at the sky. The first stars were appearing through the Harmattan haze, faint and cold as old coins.
Tohage was a candidate once, before you, before any of the 7 who failed in the last year.
Her voice dropped low enough that Azindo had to lean forward.
20 years ago, when he was young and the Enskinment was pure and the ancestral line was unbroken. The skin rejected him, not to protect him, it simply found him incompatible. He was wrong for the bond.
She turned to face him.
He never forgave it.
Azindo felt the cold of the clay wall through his smock. The night had teeth here too.
He is corrupting the Enskinment because it rejected him.
I believe he is corrupting it because he found something. Something that told him the skin, the whole Enskinment, was never meant to work the way the factions use it. That it was stolen. That the power it channels was taken from somewhere else and forced into a shape it was never designed to hold.
She stopped, swallowed.
And Tohage, who was rejected by that stolen shape, decided to reshape it into something that would accept him.
The drums beat. The stars burned cold. The groundnut oil from the kili sat warm and heavy in Azindo's stomach, and for a moment the warmth of it was the only good thing in the world. His shadow coiled at his feet like a spring being compressed.
The Damba alignment is in 5 days.
Pognazara said.
Whatever Tohage has done to the skin, the alignment will amplify it. The ceremony renews the bond between the chief and the ancestors, if the corrupted copy receives the renewal.
The corruption becomes permanent.
The corruption becomes the Enskinment. Retroactively, every chief who ever wore the skin, every ancestral bond back to the founding, all of it rewritten, replaced by whatever Tohage has designed.
She met his eyes.
I need you in that chamber before the alignment. I need you to reach the real skin beneath the copy. The true Enskinment chose you, Azindo. You are the only candidate left that the corruption has not touched.
He stood. His skin still itched the wrongness from the Waystone, crossing like a garment he could not take off. His mouth still tasted of kili and copper.
You signed my exile order.
He said, quiet, not an accusation. Something colder than an accusation, a fact laid on the ground between them, like a knife neither of them wanted to pick up.
You knew what the skin was doing, you knew it saved me, and you signed the order anyway.
Pognazara did not flinch. but she stopped breathing for one beat too long.
Oh, yes.
As she said, he waited for the explanation, the justification, the political calculus that made exile the correct move. It did not come. She offered him nothing. Just the word and the silence after it and the drums.
And if the skin rejects me again?
He asked. She did not answer. She did not need to. They both knew what rejection would mean, not exile this time, but exposure to the corrupted copy without the true skin's protection. The false bond would take him the way it had taken 7 others, and his skin would crack and the light would leak out and the harmattan would carry him away. His shadow stretched toward the east, toward the Enskinment chamber. It had already made its decision, again.